Okay. Oh, I'm not okay.
We're all set?
Just.
Okay, well, good morning and welcome to the November 14th, 2024 meeting of the New York City Campaign Finance Board. The first item of business is to approve the draft minutes of the October 17th meeting. I move their approval. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. The next item on our agenda are my opening remarks. I've already welcomed you to our meeting. With the 2024 cycle now behind us, I'd like to begin by expressing my gratitude to all New Yorkers who participated in last week's election. Our democracy is strongest when everyone participates, and we're pleased to see that unofficial results from the Board of Elections show that over 2 million New Yorkers made their voices heard at the polls. Today, the board will consider enforcement matters related to 3 committees from the 2021 election cycle. I'll now turn the floor over to our executive director, Paul S. Ryan, for his remarks.
Thank you, Chair Schaefer. Good morning, everyone. For the past few months, our staff has worked hard to engage voters in last week's elections. We created voter guides that were mailed to the homes of registered voters throughout the 5 boroughs. And during in-person events throughout the year, our staff and volunteers collected voter pledge cards from New Yorkers. Then, beginning in late October, staff and volunteers, including members of our Youth Ambassadors cohort, mailed nearly 9,000 voter pledge postcards back to the voters who filled them out, urging them to get out and vote. And our in-person voter outreach efforts were supplemented by an online push for pledges. We collected more than 15,000 voter pledges online and sent those voters an automated email reminder to vote. And this is really just a glimpse of staff's months of hard work that culminated in last week's election. So I want to thank our staff for their hard work over the past few months. While all this 2024 elections work was happening, staff has also been working really hard on the 2025 city elections. The 2025 city election campaigns are already underway, and the June 2025 primary will be here before we know it. The board will be making its first public funding payments decision at its next meeting on December 16th. Candidates in the 2025 election cycle who filed disclosure statement that was due on October 11th have begun to receive their statement reviews with a response deadline of January 15th, 2025. But candidates responding with information relevant to public funding eligibility must respond by November 22nd to have that information considered for their December 16th public funds payment eligibility. Because November 22nd is the deadline for candidates to establish their public funds eligibility for that December 16th payment. All of this public funding eligibility information can be found on our website in the candidate services section under guidance. And candidates are strongly encouraged to contact their candidate services liaison if they have any questions. That's all I've got this morning. So thank you, Chair Schaefer.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is to announce campaigns and compliance. The following candidates have completed the post-election audit process without any violations and penalties assessed by the Campaign Finance Board. The board recognizes the diligence of the candidates and their campaign staff in running campaigns that maintain compliance with New York City's campaign finance law. Of these campaigns, one is a first-time candidate with the CFB. This first one is from the 2019 special election cycle. The candidate was Adina Sash, running for City Council District number 45, and that was a first-time candidate. From the 2021 election cycle, candidate Joseph Borelli, candidate for the City Council District number 51, also had no penalties or violations. So again, congratulations to those campaigns. We have 2 campaign appearances this morning with respect to proposed violations and penalties. The first on our agenda is Fernando Aquino. Is there anybody? He's going to be on screen? That's right. Okay, so our council and staff will be at the other table. And Or will we see Mr. Aquino?
Yes, good morning. I'm here.
Good morning. Well, we hear you. Don't see you, but that's okay. As long as we hear you, I think it's sufficient. So the way this works is I'm going to ask our
As if he's on screen there.
Oh, there he is. Oh, good morning. Good
Good
morning.
morning. Good morning.
So our procedure is I'm going to ask the staff to speak very briefly, just to tee up the issue, not really an argument, but just to give us the context of what we're talking about.
Yes.
I'm going to then turn the floor over to you to make any remarks or arguments you wish to make, and maybe some response from the staff, then maybe some questions from the board. We'll go back and forth until we're done. And then we're going to have one more appearance, and after that one, we'll go into deliberations, come back and announce our decision in these matters. Okay? So, Mr. Gallagher, why don't you start?
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Schaefer, members of the board, Executive Director Ryan, and Mr. Aquino. I'm Joseph Gallagher, General Counsel for the CFB, and appearing with me today is Cindy Ledesma, an auditor at the CFB. Before the board this morning is the matter of the Fernando Aquino campaign in the 2021 election for City Council, District 14. The campaign was a participant in the program and received public funds. CFB staff recommends that the board find the campaign committed 2 violations of the Act and board rules, accepting over the limit contributions and failing to respond to the draft audit report. The campaign contests these recommended violations and penalties.
Thank you. Mr. Aquino, the floor is now yours.
Good morning. I am Fernando Aquino on behalf of the Friends of Fernando Aquino campaign. I want to thank you, the board, for the work that you do for the New York City, and CFB staff for the guidance that they provided for the completion of this latest round of work that we did to comply with the CFB. We're here today because the campaign is been penalized for 2 reasons, one of which is taking off the limit contributions, and the other is for failing to respond to an audit. The first one, I think, is a matter of, I'm a first-time candidate. We was not well versed. We were not well versed in these matters, and we returned the checks to those individuals a couple of days later. I think that the deadline required. So I really apologize for doing that. This campaign had been, one of my main goals in this campaign was to run a professional campaign and to comply with every rule, because I am really grateful for the program that allows people to run for office in the city. The other one is a penalty because we didn't respond to an audit. And in all honesty, I'm not going to argue anything but the fact that it was completely unintentional. I was unaware that we had to do that. We did the first response. My campaign worked really hard on doing the first response, and I never saw the email sent in the summer of 2023. And it seems that my treasurer also didn't see it. So I became aware in this latest round of work that we had to do, and I was even wondering what are you talking about, and Mr. Gallagher was very diligent in working with us, but that's the reason why. I mean, I didn't really never saw the email, and proof of that is that when we saw the latest email with the enforcement recommendation, we immediately started working on it, and we completed the work and got all the documentation that we needed. So I'm respectfully asking the board to consider leniency in these cases. I'm not going to extend my participation here by talking about my circumstances, but it was hard after the election and trying to prioritize family and all the matters. But the bottom line is that we didn't see the email, not my treasurer or my campaign staff, which I have to give credit to because they helped me a lot in complying with the CFB rules. So I respectfully ask that you consider either eliminating or reducing these penalties at this time. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gallagher, do you have anything
Sure.
further you'd like to say?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of short things. Mr. Aquino is correct that the campaign did provide a comprehensive response to the initial documentation request, which is evidenced by the fact there are a few compliance issues in the enforcement notice and now this. I just want to confirm that the the validity of that. We do have a record that the campaign did access the draft audit report when it's posted to the site where all external communications to campaigns is posted. We receive notification when it's been opened by the campaign. So both the draft audit report and then the warning letter in November was opened in December. You'll see that in the board memo. But that's all.
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. Aquino. You're quite correct that the board has discretion to consider reducing the penalty, and we will take that under advisement when we go into
Just a quick
deliberations.
question. Do
Yes.
you have any idea who opened it on your behalf?
Well, to be honest, all this work was the filing of the report was done by the treasurer, or one of the campaign staff, maybe the campaign manager. I'm not completely certain that which one did it, but the report was filed by the treasurer.
Thank you. Okay, so I think that's all for now. Thank you very much. I will proceed to the next campaign appearance, and that involves the campaign of Kenya Andy Hilliard. Good morning.
Morning.
So let us know who you all are.
Sydney Parker.
Kenya Handy Hilliard.
Jerry Goldfeder.
So you were here when I went through briefly our procedure. It's still Mr. Gallagher, so I will ask him to tee up the issue before us and then give you an opportunity to address the issues that you wish to address.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning again, and welcome, Ms. Handy Hilliard, Mr. Parker, and Mr. Goldfeder. I'm Joseph Gallagher, General Counsel for the CFB, and appearing with me today is Jeremiah Shannon, an auditor at the CFB. Before the board this morning is the matter of the Kenya Handy Hilliard campaign in the 2021 election for City Council District 40. The campaign was a participant in the program and received public funds. CFB staff recommends that the board find the campaign committed one violation of the Act and board rules for exceeding the expenditure limit. The campaign contests this recommended penalty and violation.
Thank you very much. Congratulations on your promotion.
I'm not the only lawyer here.
And thank you, members of the board.
Your counsel, by the way.
Oh, yes,
Thank you.
sorry. The requirement of a limit on expenditures is a serious component of the campaign finance law, and recognize that. And the facts are not in dispute, but the circumstances are such that I ask you to consider them. And I believe that they're compelling to the degree that you should exercise your discretion in terms of the penalty. So with that, I will turn it over to the candidate.
Good morning. Thank you for your time and energy and that you do. I ran for office in 2021, coming from a long storied government career, seeing my principals, what they do, what they don't do, and thinking that I had the information, knowledge, and expertise to do the things that they would not do, or take that ball over the finish line. And so I was inspired to run for office during the pandemic, understanding how city government is run. I had a behind the scenes view of the melee in the midst of a pandemic, and saw the intricacies of where I could be helpful, whether it be in the city council dealing with unfunded or underfunded mandates, trying to bridge the gap with remote work, bringing in the conversation around being a mother and having to balance career and childcare, things of that nature. So these were the inspirations for my run. Come 2020, I decided to quit my job and start this process. I hired what I believe to be a qualified and knowledgeable consultant who helped me put this together. It became clear to me that it was deficient. There was a lot of deficiencies that came through this process. My consultant helped me realize that the current treasurer I had, she had an issue with a sick mother. She was inconsistent and unavailable a lot of the times. So she advised that I replace her with someone new. I replaced her with Nikisha Hamilton, who was a volunteer treasurer who helped kind of build the administrative parts of the campaign. My consultant then said, well, you need a campaign manager. So we searched high and low for a campaign manager, understanding that we were in competition with 300 plus campaigns. We were dealing with 5, 6 major mayoral campaigns. And so we could not find a manager. And I've asked Dr. Una Clark, if she knew anybody. She sent me to somebody from Queens who said he was in a mayoral campaign. We went to Red Horse to see if they were available. They had all of their folks were they were attached to a campaign. So we searched high and low. My consultant then told Nikisha, hey, it's not that hard to be a campaign manager. Why don't you come on and do it? And so
Who's Nikisha?
Nikisha is the treasurer, who's the treasurer turned campaign manager who is at issue in this conversation.
The old treasurer or the new?
Treasurer. So she came on as treasurer. Our consultant basically said, hey, you can be campaign manager because we couldn't find one.
And how did you bring her? What was her? You sort of gave the background of old treasurer, had personal difficulties.
So I remember
Brought in, you got the recommendation to bring in a new treasurer. How did you find this treasurer? What were her?
So was my former intern when I was working for Yvette Clark. And so she had just been a knowledgeable political person who I knew for a very long time. And given many of the advice, you want somebody that you can trust, who, understood the district. She understood kind of the local politics. So I asked her to become the treasurer.
Okay.
And so she helped me then start the administrative portion and just kind of the financial part. So the CFB, all that kind of stuff. But it was maybe until October, we started looking for an actual manager. Couldn't find one. And so that's when the consultant said, hey, it's not that hard. I'll hold your hand with this and we'll proceed.
It's a consultant.
Celeste Morris.
Is that part of a broader firm?
No, she's a independent
Okay.
operator.
I think she has a firm called Morris Alsop, but she's the principal.
Okay.
So once she brought that in, Nikisha and I had a real conversation because we knew from a lot of the CFB trainings, that's a no-no, not to have a treasurer and a manager. And so my understanding and conversation with her was that we were not going to continue with her doing this dual role. She had to find a replacement treasurer. So she looked for a treasurer. She interviewed some treasurers, could not find someone who would actually volunteer for this role. And so as the campaign continued and then the demands on me created me having to go out and knock on doors. Me having to knock on doors. We kind of just went kind of with the demands of the campaign. And so again, maybe about January, February, where is this treasurer? We need a new treasurer, like we can't continue this. And so we brought on Sonia Jonaki, who was our compliance person. And so she was supposed to help Nikisha ensure that we were on track with our budgeting and track with our accounting, and that things were supposed to progress as planned, because I was becoming more involved in the campaign administration versus being out in the streets and being a candidate. So from what I understand, during this time period, we were supposed to be out and formulating, or we were supposed to create the biggest part of the expenditure, which is the mailing. So the mailers were going to be the biggest part. Nikisha was told by Sid and others that you need to make sure you create that pot for the mailers. So in my head, it's happening. I'm out in the streets. Apparently, it's not happening, and we had a rogue volunteer who was in charge. Well, let me just backtrack. We hired a field person who decided that they were going to take on a new business on behalf of the campaign and hire their field operatives under his own thing without having to collect 1099s and background information, which as soon as we found out, he was fired. So we handled that. We then decided, okay, Charles, who was this volunteer, he had access to, because he worked with Yvette Clark's campaign, congressional campaign, he had access to field operatives, and that we would work through that. Because we didn't have a mailer, or we didn't start that mailing process early enough, he decided, or from what I've been told, to just continue to have these folks poster without pretty much any accounting. Nikisha and Sonia were supposed to be accounting for this stuff. They did not. And so we now come up with about a $300,000 bill, not 330,000, excuse me, bill, that has now created less space for us to come into. And this is all retrospective because I'm out in the field.
At this point, the mailing had not happened.
The mailing had not happened.
So you knew about the $30,000.
I did not until after, like, this all comes to a head when we get a notice from the CFB that we're on track to exceed the $190,000.
Right. But my question is, did you know about the $30,000 expenditure before you authorized mail?
No. So what I'm saying is that Keisha and Sonia were keeping track of this, so in my mind. So it's not until we come down to the mailer. So we're now getting this, we're on track of exceeding it, right?
Where you get the letter.
Where you get the letter. The mailers have not been, we've had one mailer by the time we get to June 22nd. And then we get not June 22nd, excuse me. The beginning of June, we get a notice from CFB that we're on track. We have a meeting
On track to exceed.
the limit. We have a meeting now because I'm like, what is this? We have an understanding. This is not, I don't want to be in front of you all right now. So this was never part of the plan. It was made very clear by myself and the CFB that this is not supposed to happen. And Nikisha was fully aware of it. That's why she had been working with Sonia to ensure compliance.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Because when you had that meeting, the second mailer had not been authorized yet.
No, I'm about to get to.
No, but this is, I think, the crux of it.
Sure.
Right? So before the second mailer was authorized, we're aware that there was $30,000 that the campaign had to take responsibility for. Right? And then you had a plan to authorize a second mailer.
No. So
Okay.
during this conversation, I get a direct call from Sonia saying, hey, we need to sit down and talk because you all have to make some severe cuts. And so we sat down and come to find out the next 3 mailers were gonna cost 16, 18, I think 16 to $18,000. And so the idea was we have to cut these mailers. Like, it's just not, that was the expectation in this meeting. We had to cut some post or election day expenditures because we're not on track of where we're supposed to be. And the understanding is I can't come before you. Like, that was the larger conversation.
If I
So-
could just interrupt, it wasn't just an expectation. You told
I
them.
told them, oh, we had known this. This has been a theme of, we don't want this to be the result of this campaign. I'm meaning a hearing with CFC.
To not exceed the,
You understood that you were gonna cut the 18,000
Yes.
for the mailer and some election day expenditures.
Yes. And I left that meeting where Nikisha said to me, I got you. I know you have kids. So this is, we're going to make these cuts. I am now pushed out the door to go door knocking. Apparently, there was a conversation after I left saying that I needed to have these mailers. And that there was a chance for me to quote unquote win. And this is what I'm hearing from Nikisha. And so the opposite decision was made. I did not know of this decision until June 22nd, when we were still trying to, figure out who won. There was a week had gone by before we had a conclusion. And Nikisha sits me in a room, she's crying and telling me that she made the decision to have these mailers. She understands I have a family, but this is where we are. And it was basically, she left all of the mess at my lap and walked away. And so this is where I am, and trying to come to you all to not dispute the facts. I'm not here to deny anything. I take responsibility for this. I think the idea, though, is that things were happening behind my back that I had no clue of. And it wasn't until, Nikisha was the type of manager where she purposely did not tell me things. One, because she knew I would become more invested in the campaign and not invested in being a candidate. But also that there was, that I would kind of shut it down. Because again, I carry myself in the integrity of, I don't want to be here. And so it was really important for me to have that sense of integrity and to know that I was building a real campaign. That was
Tell the team not to send out the mailers.
no. I told Nikisha that not to send out the mailers, do the right. I trust you to do the right thing, because that was Sonia's suggestion. Like Sonia said, we got to cut it.
Who's Sonia?
Sonia is the compliance person.
Okay, she's a compliance person and she said to send it out?
No, she said to cut it. Nikisha made the decision to continue on without our knowledge.
And Nikisha is your campaign
She's the
manager.
campaign manager.
And you say you had replaced her as
No.
the treasurer, your compliance person became treasurer?
She became a monitor. She didn't become official treasurer.
Who was treasurer?
You're still, you're
Nikisha
listed.
is the treasurer.
Both treasurer and.
Treasurer and campaign manager.
And Sonia was hired to be that safeguard in terms of monitoring where the money was going.
And where was Celeste?
So we parted ways early on in the campaign.
She was supposed to be the check to make sure that the former intern could effectively serve as your campaign manager.
Yes, but she was more interested in just telling us what to do and not doing a lot of the work that needed to be done. And so I needed people who were going to help us in terms of doing more doing than just talking. So we ended up parting ways. So my conversation, I had a post-election conversation with Sonia because there was some discrepancy.
I have one more
Yes.
question. So in the meeting that you say that you walked into, and what you're saying is you gave clear direction,
Yes.
do not send these mailers.
I gave her direct, I said, I know you're gonna do the right thing because we can't be here. I have kids. And she said, I know you have kids. So I didn't say, do not send the mailer. I said, we can't be here.
Okay, I'm not sure exactly what that means. Like, I can't be here, but just from that.
If I may, I think what you're saying is she gave them direction. The campaign gets the letter, you're on track to exceed the limit. Candidate goes into the meeting with people and says, do what you need to do to make sure we don't go over the limit. It wasn't specific about the mailer. That's why she's answering you that way. We can't be here, meaning we can't exceed the expenditure limit and wind up in this situation.
Okay.
That's what she was saying.
Clear, your direction to your staff was make the cuts necessary to ensure that we do not
Go over.
the expenditure limit.
Yes.
It's not specific to mail specifically, but your clear direction to your staff was do not make the cuts necessary to not exceed the limit.
Yes,
That's what you're saying.
that's what I'm saying.
Okay. And then you said you walked out of the room and there was a meeting and they decided to do the opposite. Who was in that meeting and what were their roles?
But I understand Sid was in that meeting, Nikisha was in that meeting, and Charles.
That's it?
Yes.
Yes, I was in that meeting.
Okay. What is your role?
I'm a technician. I construct universes, the target. I do targeting campaigns.
Okay.
Perform electoral analysis using demographics. I served on the districting commissions as data manager, so I'm immersed totally in data.
Okay. So can I ask Sid what happened in that meeting?
What happened in that meeting? I'm trying to win the election. I don't get involved in campaign finance issues. I stay in my lane. I'm trying to win the election. You do your best running. You say your best running for last. So, you wanted your mailings to hit when voters are paying attention. We wanted to do 6 mailings. I'm making preparations for early voting, election day, to push our voters to the polls that we identified through Van Vote Builder. I'm getting reassurances from Nikisha at a certain point that the funding was going to be there. But Nikisha didn't hold like regular check-in meetings where there was communications across the board with everybody who was involved in the campaign. A lot of the financial matters she kept close to her vest. So I didn't know that there were like financial issues. I knew that Kenya got the full amount from campaign finance. That's all that really mattered to me for the most part. So I'm pushing campaign to do the mailings. It's a competitive contest. There were 3 front runners emerging as 3 front runners. I thought we could pull that out. I got assurances from Nikisha that I asked her, are we going to have the money for, we need this amount of money for early voting and election day and for the mailers. And we was doing canvassing as well. Nikisha told me the money would be there. Then I found out that there's
All
probably,
in that one meeting?
this wasn't no,
About that specific meeting where she gave direction. We cannot exceed the expenditure limits. You guys need to make cuts to make sure that we don't exceed the expenditure limits, and then walked out. I'm interested in who was in the room
I
and
was,
what was the conversation when she walked out of the room?
I was in the room and I was informed we wasn't gonna have the money for election day operations. And I was like crushed. I was crushed because I thought Kenya was one of the best candidates I've ever seen. I really wanted her to be elected to office. I invested a lot of my time and energy in that campaign. That's not the only campaign I was involved in. I was involved in Mercedes Narcisse's campaign and also Nikki Lucas's campaign. But I really wanted Kenya to win the election. So I was crushed. But at the same time, we're still trying to see if we can do something to remain competitive in that contest. Nikisha did try to implement cost-cutting measures. So the campaign could stay afloat. She told Charles that he could not spend any more money on postering, which was like kind of ridiculous. But Charles never stopped. And subsequently, they had like a big blow up over that issue. But Nikisha, she was inexperienced. I've known Nikisha since she was a child, because she was a member of PDPA, Unit Fox Political Codes.
I apologize, but just specifically, how did you get from, how did that meeting conclude to spend whatever it was you actually spent? Not the cuts, whatever cuts were made, but what, just specifically that meeting, and how did you reach the decision to spend the money that you spent at that meeting?
At that meeting, we wanted to win the election. I felt that we had to do a mailer to, raise her name recognition. So I'm pushing to do the mailer. I'm trying to win. I don't know the consequences, the implications of going overboard, because like I said, Nikisha held that financial matters, campaign finance board issues close to the vest. Kenya was never in a meeting with us discussing this matter. We pushed her to go door to door. So it wasn't like it was Nikisha, Kenya, myself, Charles saying, okay, we all agreed to this. Some people was getting blindsided. They didn't know certain things were happening. I didn't know certain things was happening with campaign finance matters. Kenya didn't know certain things was happening in terms of what we was pushing for to spend on the campaign.
Let me, I'm just getting a little confused at one. The meeting that you, as the candidate had, we said, I don't want to go over, I'm not, these aren't the exact words, I don't want to go over the limit. Who was in that meeting?
I wasn't in that meeting.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to find. Who was in that meeting?
Me, Nikisha, and Sonia was on the phone. And so and Charles. So we were sitting there saying that we needed to.
Who's Charles?
Charles was the volunteer.
So those, and then who was, and later learned who was in.
Yeah, how can you fire a volunteer?
Sid, Nikisha, and Charles.
Charles.
Okay, and at that second meeting, because obviously this is a process in which you are told things over time, but let's just stick with that second meeting for a second. You said at that second meeting, you're told we can't do election day stuff, which you were upset about. Was there also any discussion at that second meeting, not later, but at that meeting, about what, if anything, would have to be done or cut with respect to mailers?
Nikisha did indicate that there's a problem doing that mailing. I pushed back against that. I felt we needed to do another mailer. I mean, it was bad enough. We was in collapse phase at that point. I mean, no campaign wants to collapse, but we was in collapse phase. I'm trying to, grasping for straws to see what we can do.
And was a decision made to do more mailers at that time, or did that develop later?
Nikisha asked if we could cut back on the mailers or ask negotiate with the mail firm for a lower cost. And I told Nikisha, I don't think we could do that. And that's pretty much where it was left. I think Nikisha was put between a rock and hard place. And being inexperienced, this was her first campaign. She's never been in the close to the peripheral. She's always been on the peripheral campaigns, never involved in the decision-making structure of top management in the campaign. So this is totally new for her.
So at the end of that meeting, it was your understanding, this is what I'm gathering from what you've said so far, but I may be wrong, so correct me. At the end of that meeting, you understood that there was going to be less money or perhaps no money for election day stuff, but that Nikisha was going to permit some amount of further mailings, and that you were basically leaving it to her to monitor how that would impact the possibility of going over the limit.
I would say that's substantially correct.
If I may, if I can address it the way a lawyer looks at it, is if Nikisha were here and she were under oath, I suppose, I presume, she would corroborate what the candidate has said she said. She's not here. After the fact, when Kenya finds out that the limit was exceeded, Nikisha, according to Kenya, comes and cries, I know you have a family and I'm putting you in hot water, but this is what I decided, even though it contravened what Kenya told her not to do. We tried getting an affidavit from her about this, but she lawyered up. And
Pardon the expression.
with the former general counsel of the CFP. In any event, the really former. But there is a narrative that's part of her affidavit that Mr. Gallagher included as, I think it's Exhibit 8, right? That related to this with regard to the deficiencies of Nikisha.
It's a reissue, we've all read it.
So I think that is, when you were asking about the crux, I think that at least the way we understand it addresses what you were asking.
I have a question, Mr. Gallagher, at this point. Our memo on this matter lists as treasurer Kenya Handy Hilliard.
That was post. I became treasurer. She just left and stopped being treasurer.
When?
So I would say June 25th or
The change was made July 15th.
July, yeah.
2021.
So right
After the
after,
campaign.
right after she just said, I'm done June 25th. I will help you out whatever you need, but this is your problem. Like she just left me in the lurch.
There are our rules and statute. Which treasurer is potentially liable for this fine?
A former treasurer can be found liable for things that happened before they left the campaign.
And
Former treasurer isn't on this notice.
Yes.
I'm sorry, former treasurer is not on this notice. Yeah, I noticed that.
Once the treasurer leaves, I mean, the candidate changed and added herself as the treasurer to the campaign in July of 2021 to do the post-election.
So is she still liable?
The board can find liability for a former.
even though she didn't get notice and an opportunity to appear today?
I have to look into it.
I'm sorry, what was your answer?
You'd have to look into it.
Yeah, I would think she would need notice.
Yeah, I think you sense where we may be going with this, but I think we've got a procedural issue that we have to address. And I'm sorry, we've kind of interrupted the flow. Did
So
you?
does that mean you're going to, so now what then? You have to.
Now nothing, now nothing.
No,
We haven't
sir.
decided a thing.
Yeah.
You have to go.
Yeah.
We wish to give you an opportunity to complete your presentation.
Well-
That's where we're going.
Okay, fair enough.
So I think, I mean, in a nutshell, if I can ask for your mercy on this, if I can ask for a reduction, I am willing and to be the cautionary tale, to go to every CFB meeting, to let other candidates know, what not to do, what to do. I am willing to do so because I didn't run for selfish, well, I wouldn't play that way. I didn't run just to, lead. I ran to make the difference, to be the difference. And so if I can make a difference in new candidates' lives, I'm volunteering all time. But when it comes to a financial liability, I have two little kids who have in a very expensive city who need my attention and will be ready and willing to work it off in other ways.
Ms. Gallagher, do you have anything you want to respond to? All right, so we're going to deliberate and take this under advisement. We've got, obviously, as I indicated before, at least a procedural question that we have to grapple with. So we're going to do that. And come back. In light of the procedural question, it is possible, I'm not prejudging this because I haven't spoken to my colleagues, but it is possible that we may make a decision to defer decision. That's one possibility. The other is, to address today your request for a reduction in the penalty. We've got some new things to think about that we hadn't thought about previously. So we're going to go deliberate and we'll be back in a little while.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Don't take any of these papers. Yeah, take them, but I think when I go back inside. Okay, we're back in session. The board has deliberated. We have three enforcement matters before us, the two in which candidates and their representatives appeared and one other where there was no appearance. So I'll take them in the order of our chart here. So the first campaign, and I think we'll deal with this one separately, was the one we heard last, Kenya Handy Hilliard. I'm going to move that we defer decision on this and renotice it with notice to the former treasurer as well, and give both the candidate and the former treasurer an opportunity to be heard. So I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Then we have two other matters, which I'm going to group together. The first, which is the one that wasn't heard today, because the candidate didn't ask to be heard and isn't contesting. The candidate is Selvana Brooks Powers, a 2021 candidate for city council. I'm going to move in a moment to propose that we find the following violation and impose the following penalty: accepting over the limit contributions, penalty of $625, and a recommended public funds repayment of $3,798 for a total of $4,423. And then next and finally, candidate Fernando Aquino, a 2021 candidate for city council. We're going to propose that we find the following violations and impose the following penalties. 1, accepting over the limit contributions, $250. 2, failing to respond to the draft audit report, $5,000. For a total of $5,250. I'm going to make that now as a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the motion carries. We have one more item of business to do in the public session, which is we need to approve some proposed rule changes. And I'm going to ask our general counsel to tee it up for us. Thank you. I use that expression so often. I was trying to find a synonym, but okay, tee it up.
Thank you, Chair Schaefer, members of the Campaign Finance Board and Executive Director Ryan. Again, I'm Joseph Gallagher, General Counsel for the New York City Campaign Finance Board. On August 15th, 2024, the board adopted for public comment several proposed amendments to its rules. The proposed amendments were published in the city record August 28th, 2024. On September 27th, 2024, the board held a public hearing on the amendments. The board received testimony at the hearing and additional written public comments on the proposed amendments. In response to the public comments on the proposed amendments, the board extended the period for public comment to October 25th, 2024. Several amendments were made to the proposed rules in response to the testimony and comments. CFB staff is recommending that the board adopt these amendments to the rules regarding disclosure, contributions, expenditures, public funds payments, disclosure of independent expenditures, and various other aspects of the campaign finance program. These amendments are being made to clarify and update content to help support public understanding of and compliance with the board rules. The proposed rules also include minor plain language revision and reorganization of text. CFB staff is also recommending the board vote on advisory opinion number 2024.
Sorry, I thought we were just voting on the rules.
Not the AO.
I'm not.
Okay, sure.
They are.
Yep. Okay, just the rules. If the board has any questions about the staff's recommendations for the proposed additions to the board rules, I'd be happy to answer them. And if the board is prepared to act, the board staff recommends that the board adopt the proposed amendments to the board rules as final.
Fine, I think we're prepared to do that, and we'll discuss the advisory opinion and perhaps bring that up at the next meeting. Thank you very much. Our appreciation to you and to the staff in undertaking this important project. I will move that the proposed rule changes be adopted. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions? Motion carries. We're done for our public business today. I will make the usual motion that we go into executive session, at which time there's no business that we need to come back for, and we'll adjourn directly from the executive session. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Thank you. We're done for today.